Today, I'd like to speak on a subject that touches all of us at some point in life: pain. Pain is universal. It is a reality we all encounter, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual. It raises many questions, and often, in the midst of our suffering, we ask one of the most profound: where is God in our pain? Throughout history, philosophers, theologians, and everyday people have wrestled with this question. If God is all-powerful and all-loving, why do we experience pain? Is it a sign that He is absent or indifferent? Or does pain carry a deeper purpose? To understand pain in relation to God, we must first recognize that pain is part of the human experience. From the moment we enter the world, we encounter both joy and sorrow, pleasure and suffering. In many faith traditions, pain is not seen as a contradiction to God's goodness, but rather as a way to shape and transform us. In Christianity, we see this truth expressed in the life of Jesus Christ. He experienced profound suffering, betrayal, rejection, and ultimately the pain of crucifixion. But within His suffering, we see the redemptive power of pain. Through His wounds, healing came to the world. His suffering wasn't meaningless. It had purpose. Similarly, in our own lives, pain often carries a purpose we might not immediately see. Pain refines us. It has the ability to build resilience, deepen empathy, and draw us closer to the divine. In times of suffering, we often seek God more earnestly, and it is in these moments of vulnerability that we may experience His presence most profoundly. But let's be clear, pain is not something to romanticize or idealize. It hurts. It can leave us feeling broken and lost. Yet, in many spiritual teachings, including Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and Buddhism, suffering can lead to growth, a transformation of the soul. In Christianity, for instance, the Apostle Paul speaks of glory through suffering, Romans 8, verse 18, and how endurance builds character. God, it seems, allows pain not because He is indifferent, but because He is invested in our growth. He walks with us through it, guiding us towards something greater than we can imagine. Pain opens the door to compassion, both for ourselves and for others. It is often in our darkest moments that we develop the capacity to truly understand the suffering of others and to extend a hand of love and support. Consider the image of a sculptor chiseling a block of marble. Every strike of the hammer removes a part of the stone, and to the marble, the process may seem painful and unnecessary, but the sculptor sees what the marble cannot, a vision of beauty and form that only emerges after the rough edges have been removed. In this analogy, God is the sculptor, and we are the marble. The pains we endure are not meant to destroy us, but to reveal the masterpiece within us. Pain also reveals our dependence on God. In times of joy and ease, we often forget our need for a higher power. But pain reminds us of our limitations, our vulnerability. It invites us to surrender, to lean not on our own understanding, but to trust in a wisdom greater than our own. Of course, it is normal to feel anger or confusion toward God in times of suffering. The Psalms are filled with cries of anguish, questioning God's presence in the midst of pain. Even Jesus, on the cross, cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Matthew 27, verse 46. These moments of questioning are not signs of weak faith, but rather of a deep relationship with God, where we can bring our most raw and honest emotions to Him. In conclusion, pain is an inescapable part of life, but rather than seeing it as proof of God's absence, we can view it as an invitation to deeper connection, growth, and trust. God does not always remove our suffering, but He promises to walk with us through it, offering strength, comfort, and ultimately transformation. So, where is God in our pain? He is right beside us, guiding us through the fire and shaping us into the people we are meant to become. Pain is a universal experience that touches every human life, often prompting deep questions about the nature of existence, suffering, and the divine. Whether it manifests as physical affliction, emotional turmoil, or spiritual crisis, Pain challenges our understanding of ourselves and our relationship to the world, and for many, our relationship to God. The question of why a good and omnipotent God allows suffering has been a central concern in religious philosophy for millennia. Is pain merely a sign of God's absence, or does it carry a deeper, transformative purpose? This explores the relationship between pain and God, examining how pain can be understood not as a contradiction to divine love, but as an integral part of a human journey towards spiritual growth and deeper faith. One of the most perplexing questions in theology is why an all-loving, all-powerful God would allow pain to exist in the world. This question, often referred to as the problem of evil, has troubled believers and non-believers alike. If God is both omnipotent and benevolent, why doesn't He intervene to prevent or alleviate suffering? From natural disasters to personal tragedies, the existence of pain seems, at first glance, to contradict the notion of a caring and involved deity. In philosophical terms, this dilemma is framed as the challenge of reconciling three core truths. 1. God is omnipotent. 2. God is omnibenevolent. And 3. Suffering exists. Atheists often argue that the presence of suffering disproves the existence of a loving God, while others suggest that it points to a God who is indifferent or distant. However, many religious traditions offer nuanced perspectives on this issue, viewing pain not as evidence of God's absence, but as a means through which God engages with humanity in a deeper, more profound way. First, it is important to recognize that pain is an inescapable part of the human condition. From the moment we are born, we are vulnerable to illness, loss, and emotional distress. No life is immune to suffering. In Christian theology, this is often linked to the concept of original sin, the idea that human suffering began with the fall of Adam and Eve and continues as part of our broken, imperfect world. Pain, in this view, is a consequence of free will and humanity's alienation from divine perfection. However, pain is not confined to Christian thought. In Buddhism, for example, the first of the Four Noble Truths teaches that suffering, dukkha, is an inherent part of life. In this context, suffering is not a punishment, but a natural part of existence, and spiritual liberation comes not from avoiding pain, but from understanding and transcending it. Similarly, in Islam, suffering is often viewed as a test of faith, with the belief that enduring hardship with patience brings spiritual rewards. These perspectives suggest that pain, while painful in the immediate sense, has a larger role in the spiritual development of the individual. It is through suffering that we are confronted with our limitations, our vulnerability, and our need for something greater than ourselves, perhaps our need for God. In many religious traditions, pain is not seen solely as something to be feared or avoided, but as a catalyst for growth. In the Christian New Testament, the Apostle Paul speaks of how suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. Romans 5 verses 3 to 4. This view suggests that pain has the potential to transform us, refining our character and deepening our faith. Suffering, rather than being a punishment or an arbitrary misfortune, can be an opportunity for spiritual maturation. One of the clearest examples of this in Christian theology is the suffering of Jesus Christ. Through his crucifixion, Jesus experienced the depths of human pain, physical agony, emotional betrayal, and spiritual desolation. His cry on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Matthew 27 verse 46, captures the profound feeling of abandonment that often accompanies suffering. Yet, within Christian belief, this moment of excruciating pain becomes the means of salvation for humanity. Through suffering, redemption is made possible. Jesus' pain is not meaningless. It serves the ultimate purpose of reconciling humanity to God. Similarly, in our personal lives, pain often forces us to confront difficult truths about ourselves and our circumstances. It can lead to greater empathy, compassion, and understanding of others. It can drive us to seek God more earnestly, to rely not on our own strength, but on divine guidance and comfort. Pain, in this sense, has the potential to draw us closer to the divine, breaking down the barriers of self-reliance and pride that often keep us distant from God. A key aspect of understanding pain in relation to God is the belief that God does not abandon us in our suffering. While we may not always understand why we experience pain, many religious teachings affirm that God is present with us in our struggles. In Christianity, this is most clearly expressed in the image of Jesus as Emmanuel, God with us, the Incarnation. The belief that God became human in the form of Jesus reflects the idea that God is intimately acquainted with human suffering. Rather than remaining distant or indifferent, God chose to experience pain firsthand. This idea is echoed in many other spiritual traditions. In Judaism, the Psalms are filled with cries of anguish and lament, but they also contain affirmations of God's faithfulness even in times of suffering. Similarly, in Islam, the belief in God as the most compassionate and the most merciful provides comfort in times of hardship, with the understanding that God is aware of every difficulty and provides the strength to endure. In this way, God's presence in pain is not always about removing the suffering, but about walking with us through it. God may not always explain the why of our pain, but He promises to be with us in the how, in how we endure, how we grow, and how we find meaning in the midst of hardship. The relationship between pain and God remains a profound mystery, one that cannot be fully comprehended by human reason alone. Pain challenges our faith, but it also has the potential to deepen it, drawing us into a more intimate relationship with the divine. Rather than seeing pain as proof of God's absence or indifference, we can view it as an opportunity for spiritual growth and transformation. God does not promise a life free from suffering, but He does promise to walk with us through our pain, offering comfort, strength, and ultimately redemption. In the end, pain may not be something we can ever fully understand, but it is something we can learn to embrace as part of the human experience, a part that, paradoxically, brings us closer to God and to the fullness of who we are meant to be. Pain is one of life's most profound and perplexing experiences. It transcends cultural, social, and religious boundaries, affecting everyone in one form or another. Whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, pain often feels like an unwelcome intrusion into the human experience. Yet, for centuries, theologians, philosophers, and religious thinkers have grappled with the question of pain's purpose, especially in relation to the divine. Why does pain exist? And if there is a benevolent God, how can suffering fit into a divine plan? These are questions that delve deep into what many call the mystery of pain, a mystery tied intimately to the nature of God and the spiritual journey of humanity. This will explore the idea of pain as part of the divine mystery, examining how suffering, though often incomprehensible, may serve a higher purpose beyond human understanding. Whether through physical illness, emotional heartbreak, or spiritual despair, pain seems to be woven into the fabric of human existence. No one is immune to it. This universal reality raises existential questions. Why must pain be part of our lives? Can a loving and all-powerful God allow or even purpose such suffering? For many, the existence of pain is the greatest argument against the existence of benevolent God. This line of reasoning, known as the problem of evil, argues that if God is both omnipotent and omnibenevolent, then the existence of suffering contradicts His nature. If God is all-powerful, why does He not prevent suffering? If God is all good, why does He allow it in the first place? While this dilemma has led some to doubt or reject the idea of God, many religious traditions suggest that pain and suffering, far from disproving God's existence, are part of a larger and more profound divine mystery. In many religious and philosophical traditions, pain is seen not as an arbitrary evil, but as a necessary part of the human experience. In Christian thought, for example, suffering is often understood as a means of spiritual refinement. The Apostle Paul in the New Testament speaks of suffering as something that produces endurance, character, and hope. Romans 5 verses 3 to 4. This perspective does not deny the difficulty of pain, but suggests that it has a purpose, one that may be hidden from us in the moment, but is ultimately for our growth and transformation. Other traditions echo this sentiment. In Buddhism, the first noble truth teaches that suffering, dukkha, is an inherent part of life. Instead of viewing suffering as meaningless, Buddhist teachings encourage individuals to accept pain as a pathway to enlightenment. The process of grappling with suffering is believed to lead to deeper wisdom and liberation from attachment. Similarly, in Islam, suffering is often seen as a test of faith, with the belief that enduring hardship with patience and trust in God brings spiritual merit and growth. In these views, pain is not a punishment, but a catalyst for development. It strips away illusions of control, self-sufficiency, and invulnerability, forcing individuals to confront their dependence on something greater than themselves. Pain can deepen empathy, foster compassion, and lead to greater understanding of both oneself and others. Thus, while pain is undeniably difficult, it serves as a powerful tool in the shaping of character and soul. One of the core elements of the divine mystery is that God's ways are beyond human comprehension. In many religious traditions, including Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, it is acknowledged that God's wisdom is far greater than human understanding. The Bible's book of Isaiah famously states, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord." Isaiah 55 verses 8 to 9. This suggests that what seems incomprehensible or cruel from human perspective may, in fact, serve a larger, divine purpose beyond our ability to grasp. The story of Job in the Bible encapsulates this theme. Job, a righteous man, suffers enormous losses, his health, wealth, and family. Throughout his trials, he questions why God would allow such suffering to befall him when he has done nothing wrong. In the end, God responds not by explaining the specific reasons for Job's suffering, but by reminding Job of the vastness of divine wisdom. God's answer, though frustrating in its lack of specifics, emphasizes the idea that humans cannot fully understand the complexities of God's plan. This idea, that God's purposes are mysterious and often hidden from human understanding, is not meant to trivialize pain. On the contrary, it acknowledges the depth of human suffering while affirming that there may be a larger picture at play, one that we are not privy to. In this way, the divine mystery offers a way to hold both suffering and faith together. We may not understand why pain happens, but we trust that it fits into a plan that, ultimately, is for the good of creation. While pain often feels like a sign of God's absence, many spiritual traditions emphasize the opposite, that God is particularly present in times of suffering. This is especially prominent in Christian theology, where the concept of the incarnation, that God became human in the person of Jesus, reflects the belief that God intimately knows and shares in human suffering. Through Jesus' suffering and death on the cross, Christians believe that God has entered into the deepest forms of human pain. The crucifixion is not just a moment of physical agony for Jesus. It is an act of divine solidarity with all who suffer. In this way, pain is not a sign of God's distance, but a moment where God is closest, walking with us through our darkest valleys. Similarly, in other faiths, the belief that God or the divine remains present in suffering is a source of comfort. In Islam, the idea that Allah is closer than the jugular vein, Quran 50:16, reassures believers that God is intimately involved in every moment of their lives, even when they suffer. In Hinduism, the understanding that suffering is part of the cycle of life, samsara, is coupled with the belief that the divine is ever present, guiding souls through their struggles toward eventual liberation. Ultimately, pain as part of the divine mystery calls us to a stance of humility. It reminds us that human understanding is limited, and that there are aspects of life, including suffering, that we cannot fully grasp. Pain invites us to trust in a higher wisdom, to lean into the mystery, and to seek meaning even when answers elude us. This does not mean that we should passively accept suffering or fail to work toward alleviating the pain of others. Rather, it means recognizing that pain has a place in the larger spiritual journey, a place that, while often hidden from our immediate understanding, is part of the unfolding of the divine plan. Pain, while difficult and often incomprehensible, is deeply intertwined with the divine mystery. It challenges us to grapple with questions of meaning, faith, and the nature of God, rather than seeing pain as something to be eliminated or explained away. Many religious traditions encourage us to embrace it as a part of life that, though mysterious, can lead to growth, spiritual depth, and a closer relationship with the divine. Pain may remain a mystery, but within that mystery, there is the possibility of transformation and the promise of divine presence. We may never fully understand the why of our suffering, but in the process of seeking, enduring, and trusting, we may find ourselves drawn closer to the heart of the mystery itself, closer to God.